Welcome to today's Explainer. You know, if you look at the Middle East right now, it honestly helps to view it as this incredibly complex, high-stakes, miniature war game. And I mean a game where the outcome literally dictates global trade, energy markets, the whole shebang. Across this giant board, state actors and non-state proxies are just constantly moving pieces around, forging alliances, and positioning forces. So, based on our source material today, we're going to visually map out this fascinating, intricate web of proxy wars, alleged invasion plans, and the massive multinational deterrent shield being built to stop them right in their tracks. Okay, let's dive into this. The absolutely most shocking claim detailed in our sources revolves around something analysts are calling the Land March Plan. Now, when we think of modern military escalation, we usually picture airstrikes, right? Missile barrages. But the report outlines an alleged Iranian strategy that completely bypasses direct aerial bombardment. Instead, it favors a ground militia invasion, specifically targeting Kuwait and Bahrain. It's essentially a strategy focused on asymmetric land grabs rather than your traditional state-on-state warfare. So here's the game plan for today's Explainer. We'll start with the Land March Plan, move on to the regional militia network, look at encircling Gulf security, detail Egypt's forward defense, and finally, regional deterrence alliances.
Part 1. The Land March Plan.
According to the source, the primary initial target actually isn't Saudi Arabia directly, it's Kuwait. The alleged strategy essentially uses Kuwait as a coastal beachhead. The logic here is pretty straightforward. By securing Kuwaiti territory, proxy militias can establish this firm foothold right on the Arabian Peninsula. And from that strategic staging ground, they could effectively encircle Riyadh, sparking a direct physical threat to Saudi Arabia and totally upending the broader Arab balance of power. It's a very calculated, stepping-stone approach to regional dominance. Let's move along and see how this builds, because ground incursions by proxy groups, they are not a new phenomenon here. Back in November 2009, Houthi militias attempted a ground incursion into Saudi Arabia's Jazan province. Following the regional fallout of 2011 and the massive geopolitical shockwaves triggered in late 2023, we arrive at 2024. The source notes that recent mass displacement shifts are actually being utilized to quietly reposition these proxy populations much closer to strategic borders. Section 2, the Regional Militia Network. 60, that number is just staggering. The report claims that 60 different armed factions have been systematically gathered under one unified banner, the Islamic resistance in Iraq. I mean, to put that into perspective, that's more individual proxy groups than the total number of regular army divisions in a lot of sovereign nations. We are not talking about some ragtag group of fighters here. We're talking about a heavily armed, highly coordinated umbrella organization with dozens of specialized units, all allegedly funded and directed by Iranian operatives. And this brilliantly illustrates just how international this network really is. The source categorizes these forces by region. In Iraq, sure, you've got established groups like Kataib Hezbollah, Badr, and Nujaba. But look beyond Iraq for a second. You have the Zainabiyan Brigade recruiting out of Pakistan, the Fatimiyon Brigade from Afghanistan, and the Al-Ashtar Brigades in Bahrain. The report strongly suggests this is essentially a globally sourced mercenary army, perfectly structured to execute regional objectives while giving their state sponsors absolute plausible deniability. Section 3, Encircling Gulf Securing. So the source details a highly coordinated three-front plan designed to physically squeeze and pressure Saudi Arabia. First up in southern Iraq, there's this fascinating and really alarming demographic shift reported. Displaced populations from Lebanon have allegedly been relocated right near the Basra and Najaf borders, basically acting as potential reserve forces right on the doorstep of Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Then, on the second front, down in Yemen, Houthi forces are still pushing hard toward the Red Sea and Saudi Arabia's southern flank. And on the third front, evolving power dynamics and vacuums in Syria and Lebanon that these militias are just incredibly eager to exploit. The source brings up a deeply compelling point here about what it calls the recycling of militias. We're basically seeing veterans of the Syrian conflict being completely repurposed. On one side, you have Sunni political Islam militias that fought to topple the Syrian regime, and the report neutrally notes they allegedly had Western and even Ukrainian technical backing in recent drone warfare. But on the flip side, you have Shia political Islam militias that fought to save the Syrian regime, now reportedly shifting their entire focus and battle-hardened experience directly toward the Gulf.
Section 4, Egypt's Forward Defense Strategy.
So the crucial point here is that Cairo is absolutely not waiting at its own borders for the threat to show up. They employ a doctrine of forward defense. Egypt views securing Riyadh and protecting 5 vital regional borders and waterways as basically identical to protecting Cairo itself. Because look, if the Arab balance of power falls in the Gulf, Egypt knows the threat is already knocking on its own front door. To execute this, Egypt is making 3 massive strategic moves on the board. Step 1, forward bases. Egyptian air defense systems and military personnel are right now actively positioned in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Step 2, the Southern Fleet. The Egyptian Navy is physically securing the Bab al-Mandab Strait, actively deterring any attempts by militias to mine or block that crucial waterway. And step 3 is diplomatic mobilization. Egypt is leveraging a massive diplomatic network. In fact, the source notes that the impact of activating even just 10% of Egyptian alliances is enough to drastically project power and halt proxy expansion before it triggers a wider war. Section 5, Regional Deterrence Alliances. The source neutrally reports on joint defense pacts that have been quietly activated, creating this really formidable multinational wall. Saudi Arabia has reportedly called upon Pakistan's elite Iron Guard, bringing in highly specialized airborne and air defense forces. Simultaneously, Turkey has deployed its heavily trained black teams to provide specialized military support. So right alongside Egypt's massive air and naval deployments, you have these elite state militaries standing directly in the path of the alleged non-state proxy invasion. But beyond just the troops on the ground, there is a totally complex diplomatic wargame playing out. Egypt is heavily mobilizing its diplomacy with the United States to pressure a halt to this proxy expansion. But why this truly matters on a global scale is that this isn't just local politics. The source suggests that if the regional board destabilizes any further, they are totally prepared to pull major global players, like China and Russia, into the mix to balance the power scales. The whole objective here isn't to fight a multi-front regional war. It's to build a deterrent shield so incredibly intimidating that the war literally never happens. Now, what's really interesting to think about here is a quote from the historic scholar Ibn Khaldun. He once said that states that want to survive do not wait for the victor to protect them, but build their own strength. And wow, does that ancient wisdom capture today's geopolitical reality perfectly? Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey, they all understand that in a region just filled with proxy threats, you cannot sit back and wait for the storm to hit your borders. And you definitely can't rely on external superpowers alone for protection. You have to project strength forward. So we've seen the board, the alleged invasion plans, and the massive counter-deployments. But the ultimate question remains, will this unprecedented web of military alliances and forward defense successfully deter the proxy militias and secure the Gulf? Or are we just watching the setup for a much broader, multi-front conflict? It's a precarious balance of power, for sure, and the next move on this chessboard could change the region forever. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one. you.